Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Reduce Anxiety with Heart-Brain Healing. Explore heart coherence as a path from stress to calm, connection, and inner peace. My name is Stephen Knight. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and we have been so blessed over the years to deepen our relationship with a very important organization and an important leader over the last years. The organization is the HeartMath Institute, and it's really been at the forefront of understanding why the heart has such a central role to play, not only in our spiritual awakening, in our love relationships, but in our physiology and reducing stress and really living a more harmonized and healthy life. We're going to explore some of the frontier research around this and some really great practices with Rollin McCraty, who is the director of research at the HeartMath Institute. He has a doctorate, he's super knowledgeable, and really walks his talk. So we've been blessed to do a number of programs with him. We're going to do another course coming with him coming up soon, and that's called Heart-Brain Healing that we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. So with that said, Roland, thank you so much for joining us again.
It's great to be back, Stephen. I always enjoy chatting with you, and I've really loved working with. I have to give a shout out to your staff at
Yeah.
the network. It's great people to work with.
Yeah, well, the feeling is very mutual. So Roland, let's begin our time together with a little bit about your journey into the centrality of the heart. You're coming out of a more technical background and understanding, and why this path of heart-brain coherence became so central to your life work.
Yeah, let me see if I can give you the short version of that. In my original career was a communication engineer. I used to work for Motorola, and so learned a lot about magnetic fields and how to send information around the world, literally using communications equipment. And I got involved, well, the short version of this is I was always curious about and always trying to seek a deeper understanding of, well, what is charge, for example, or a magnetic field, these types of things, and was never happy with the answers I got in academia. It was just give me, well, here's the formula. Well, no, 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 I got that. What is it, right? Not just how it behaves. Well, long story short, that led me to California. I was in Nebraska at that time, actually, to get a degree in consciousness studies. So I'd read some books that kind of led me that way. And one thing led to another. And then I ended up meeting Doc Childre, the founder of HeartMath. Meanwhile, I've got a degree in consciousness research, right? So thought I knew something. And that's when I realized, no, I really didn't. There was something more about the heart in his research and his background, and it was through my own experience that I can honestly say that I made more personal gains and growth, mentally, emotionally, even physically, in just a few months after meeting Doc and understanding the deeper aspects of the heart. And I had it literally in years of meditative practices. So that I sold the company I'd started, in a very successful company, and helped him, along with some others, found the HeartMath Institute. And then we started the research center. And this was long before positive psychology movement and these types of things, which I'm all for, where we were looking at the physiology, what happens in our body when we feel things like love or appreciation or kindness, actually the heartfelt feelings of that. And we discovered some really unique and new things that I think have really changed the industry, I might say, of this focus on research. And once we discovered what we now call heart coherence, then it became really about many rabbits got chased down the hole to really understand the deeper physiology of heart-brain communication. But then we realized that we needed to come up with simple yet powerful research-backed techniques that people could use in their daily life to shift into this optimal state of coherence and think more clearly, clear the emotional fog or the mental fog, and have more emotional stability, and really help cut through stress in a new way. So then that led to developing a lot of the programs we've developed over the years.
Well, thanks for following your instincts to where you have, and I know you've blessed tens of hundreds of thousands, probably millions of lives with this
Yeah, I mean,
work,
it's
and
in way in the millions. Yeah.
way in the millions. Okay. Well, let's talk. I think it's good for people to have a deeper understanding of what heart-brain coherence is from kind of a physiological perspective, and then get into like why that has such a powerful impact on the rest of our systems and emotional health and
Yeah.
our spiritual
Um,
well-being.
so most people know what heart rate is, right, Stephen? How many times does the heart beat in a minute? But in reality, our heart rate changes with our heart rate changes with each and every heartbeat, and that's called heart rate variability. And this is what allows us to have a heart rhythm. So really, HRV is the study of rhythm, the rhythms in our body. And there are many different rhythms, as it turns out, that we have that the heart is actually driving over many different time scales. And as it turns out, the heart sends far more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart. I mean, and that's actually been known since the late 1800s, just ignored and forgotten. But these signals the heart sends to the brain have powerful influences on brain function in many different ways. And we'll go into that deeper in the course, of course. Um, so when we get the heart and brain literally in sync, that's what heart coherence is about, or heart brain coherence, we can call it. These signals from the heart go to every major brain center, to the amygdalas, which is our emotional center. So by changing the rhythm of the heart, we change how we feel very quickly. You go to the upper parts of our brain, it allows for literally for the global neural activity in the brain to get more in sync, which allows us to think more clearly, clear
Hmm.
the mental fog, make better decisions, these types of things.
So does that show up on the EEG as well then? There's a
Oh yeah.
harmonization of some of the electrical patterns?
Oh, absolutely. And we do a lot of heart brain, measuring the brain waves or EEG and ECG and many other measures as well. And you can quite literally measure heart brain synchronization.
Hmm.
So the just sitting here now with us chatting, probably about 14% of our brainwave activity is synchronized to the heart. But when we get in this optimal state of heart coherence, that measure of synchronization is significantly increased. And that's what really underlies optimal performance,
Hmm.
mentally, emotionally, and even physically, reaction times, these types of things. That's why so many professional sports teams use HeartMath, Olympic teams, at least 40 major basketball and baseball teams that I know. A number of world records have been set in recent years of people learning about heart coherence and that kind of training. But I don't want to make this sound like it's just sports because it's really more about our day-to-day lives and how we navigate the challenges and the stresses that we face
Hmm.
from a place of more inner composure, more grace, more ease, able to flow through the challenges of the day.
Hmm. So maybe it would be great to get a little bit of a ballpark of like how much so from 14% coherence, like how much can you shift that with some simple practices that you can learn?
Well, the percentages don't really matter, but it's, 10, 15% increases in that neural synchronization
Hmm.
that happens.
So then, and that's in effect, that's like doubling the efficacy of the heart to synchronize your system, then it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Well, maybe an easier way to think of this is if you think of the rhythm of the heart, it's the master rhythm in the body. There's absolutely no question of that. But if you think of the heart as a conductor in an orchestra and all the body systems, right, as the players, right, in the orchestra. So if the conductor gets out of sync, and which is exactly what happens when we experience stressful feelings like frustration or impatience or anxiety, then the conductor's kind of out of sync, so the whole body now is out of sync. Whereas when you get the heart in coherence or the conductor's in coherence, then the body's singing, the music of the body's in harmony, right?
Hmm.
I don't hope that analogy helps a little
Yeah.
bit.
Maybe talk a little bit about like, so stress is one of the most common things that people are struggling with and has a lot of downstream impacts. What's in the opposite direction? What is stress doing to our system and heart rate variability?
Yeah, well, stress, well, it gets us out of sync. Um, and you see this so clearly in the heart rhythms. And I want to bridge two things together here, Stephen, if I may. And this is so easy, what I'm about to say, to prove here in the lab. We've done this for 30 years. We can have you wired up to all the different gizmos, brain waves and ECGs and looking at hormonal flows and rhythms and immune markers and these types of things. And when we feel or experience like those stress, the things that we really call stress, really boils down to feelings of anxiety, fear, frustration, impatience, these types of feelings. And that shows up in the heart rhythm of the heart as a very chaotic look or jerky looking heart rhythm. And as I said, the heart rhythm creates either in sync or out of sync activity across all the body systems. So it's we can call it a dysregulated nervous system, or an incoherent or out of sync versus a regulated nervous system or where we get in sync. They're all interchangeable terms trying to explain the same thing.
Mm.
But so when we feel good, we feel love or compassion or just patience, that creates a very different rhythmic activity where things get synchronized.
And what are some of the other sort of longer term downstream effects physiologically, emotionally from that synchronized state?
With the, let me say it this way, we need, first of all, I think we have to help people understand that we have an emotional system. You know, we hear talk a lot about emotions, but emotions run the show. That's really what I was trying to say earlier. When we can thinking, thoughts, cognitive processes, sure, we can measure some changes. But when you feel something, when you trigger an emotion, positive or negative, big changes happen physiologically in our hormones and neurotransmitters, in our immune function and the rhythms of the heart, all these electrical rhythms. So it's emotions that run the show. And so if we're running a lot of stressful emotions through our system, that's basically rapidly increasing the aging process. It is really kind of a main effect it has over the long term. But it's also causing us to take a lot of our higher brain and reasoning capacities, the frontal areas of the brain, offline. So that's why we make inefficient choices. You know, I often ask an audience, Stephen, to think back. It might even be recently or over the past weeks, months, if somebody might have asked you to do something, or you wanted to do, you had an ambition to buy something new or do something or get into a new relationship or whatever, but you just had a deeper inner sense that that wasn't the right choice. Right. So that's kind of a heart mind way of thinking of the difference between the mind and the heart right there. But the mind wins and we follow through and we do it anyway. Right. We override that deeper feeling, that deeper intuitive sense. And then it could be an hour later or years later, and anything in between, we think back and realize, God, I wish I'd have followed that deeper sense, the way things end up playing out. You know what I mean, Stephen? I'm
Hmm.
sure you've had that
Yeah,
experience.
makes a big difference when you can really get that true radar for what the right pathway is.
And if I may, I was talking about the emotional system, and I think it's really helpful for people to understand that it is a complex system with three major components. There's the biochemical system, the hormones and peptides and neurotransmitters. And so some in that field look at emotions, that's what emotions are. It's the biochemistry. And that's true. But then if you talk to a psychophysiologist or a neuroscientist, a guy like me, we would say, yeah, but no, it's really more about the activity in the brain and nervous system that actually gives rise to and sets those hormones in motion. Okay, so that'd be your second component. And then we also have, and this is what's the new part, and the science is really starting to prove out now. We also have what I call an energetic system.
Hmm.
And all three are, you can affect either, all the three by affecting one or the other. But the energetic one is where it really happens first. And by learning to be more tuned in to our energetic system, and a lot of people are already onto this, Stephen, that you can actually feel like you get triggered, right? Or something happens. You can actually feel it energetically before it filters down into the measurable changes in the neural activity in the brain and nervous system and then in the hormonal system. And the key here is as we learn to become more sensitive and self-aware at the energetic level, it's a lot easier to pause and stop those triggers before they play out physically. And that's when this is really transformational for people.
Hmm.
I hope that makes sense the way it
Yeah, it
does.
makes a lot of sense. I kind of want to ask a little bit more in the energetic dimension because I think that's where there's a fascinating layer where you start to understand how we affect other people beyond just ourselves too, with this sort of energetic field effect. You know, share a little bit about that?
Oh, well, sure. I mean, I can take the mystery out of it. I mean, the energetic system is pretty complex, but at a very simple level, right now, all around the world, doctors are putting electrodes on people's chests to measure the electrocardiogram or their brain to measure the electroencephalograph, right? Well, that's called electro because what the electrodes measure is electricity. I mean, literally the flow of electrical current. Now, whenever you have a flow of electrical current, And this is kind of basic physics, right? You create a magnetic field. The electrodes don't see that. You need a different instrument, and that's called a magnetometer. But magnetic fields have a pretty neat property in they go through things. Now, this is why you can use your cell phone indoors, right? It's the magnetic field that's going through the walls and the windows. You can even be in an elevator and use your cell phone. So in fact, I think biology and nature beat us to all this technology, right? That's what I used to do professionally, right? Use communication devices to send information around. So the cell phone, you're using that to carry, the field is carrying information, your voice, a text message, whatever. Well, the same thing's going on in us. So when the heart beats or we have brain waves, those fields that we measure through electrodes that are produced, they radiate right through the skin out into the space around us. So this is part of our energetic system. Now the heart, we measure that electrically speaking in millivolts. You measure brain waves in microvolts, 100 times bigger, if you get my drift here.
Hmm.
Now we were able to show that these fields are carrying information, especially about our emotions. And we can measure that. I can stick a magnetometer out here and a few feet away from a person and tell what they're feeling just by looking at the vibrational signatures that's being carried by the field. Then they literally are vibrational signatures. So when we're feeling, say, kind or caring towards someone, that vibrational signature is very different than if we're feeling frustrated or angry or fearful. And then part two, in that line of research, this is back in the 90s for us, is we were able to show that our nervous systems are like big antennas. We are detecting these fields in a measurable way, and we respond to these fields from other people. So what this means is that we're always energetically communicating with others.
Hmm.
Um,
So if we're broadcasting out stress and anxiety, it's also going to negatively impact, even if our words don't appear to be saying anything, we're going to be affecting the people around us in ways that they might not want to do business with us or not hang around us.
yeah, or they don't trust you, or they don't believe you, or
Yeah.
because there's a mismatch between what you might be saying, the words, and the energetic information.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's such a good point. And it's great to have the science to validate what people sort of intuitively feel around that.
Well, but also keep in mind that same field is going to every cell in our body.
Hmm.
And so this is really the ultimate epigenetic information, right? So it's the vibrational information in our energetic system is literally talking to all the cells in our own body and either bringing them into more coherence, right? Or dysregulation.
Hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the practices. I know you're going to guide us in the inner stillness technique in a little bit, but maybe sort of on the high level, how are the practices been designed to sort of help to harmonize and create this synchronized heart-brain
Well,
coherence?
yeah, great question, Stephen. Of course, we do have a heart focused meditation technique. It's called the heart lock in, and we'll go into that in depth in the 7 week course. But most of the heart math techniques are really designed to be used in real time, in the moment when you're, well, a kind of a common example, in a traffic jam, right? There you are, traffic's not moving and you're starting to feel impatient or frustrated. What a perfect time to learn and use a technique to, instead of increasing our own aging process and sitting there stewing and, the biochemicals that use energy and increase aging, shift, use a technique. And that's really mostly what we focus on is in that in the moment self-regulation of our emotional system throughout the day, right? So the inner stillness technique would be one of those. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
asking?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the inner stillness technique and then lead us in it so we can practice it together.
Yeah, well, this is I'll walk you through the steps, but you really only have to remember kind of the energetic essence of it. But this is a technique that you can really use whenever you notice that you're feeling stress. It could be worry, could be feelings of overwhelm or impatience. Impatience is a really sneaky one because it's so common in our system and familiar that we don't even realize we're feeling it, or we're feeling disconnected from others or our deeper self, right? Or you just want to feel better. This is a technique you can use. And the first step is really, we call it heart focused breathing. And you just focus your attention in the area at the center of your chest, the center of your heart, and pretend you're breathing in and out of your chest or heart area. And as you do that breathing, imagine that your breath is calmly slowing down the vibrations of your mental and emotional energy and taking the intensity out of any rushed energy you might have. Now, you want to just stay with this step and don't care if your mind disrupts you or you spin back up into mind chatter. Just gently bring your energy back to the center of the heart area. Okay. Now, just a little bit more on this first step. It's not about that you're trying to totally stop the mind. I don't think anybody of us can really do that. But even helping reduce the intensity of thoughts and helping calming your energy helps improve your capacity to sense your inner heart feelings and its suggestions. Now, this can be done in a pretty short amount of time. And the key here is you can do this anytime, anywhere. You don't have to have your eyes closed, although it can help sometimes when you're first learning. So just stay with the heart focused breathing to calm and slow down your inner vibrations. And then the second step, as you feel your energy calming, softly radiate love and peace into your inner environment. Okay, now this is going to help you connect with your deeper heart energy. So just softly radiating love and peace to all your cells, to your inner environment. You want to stay with this for a bit. Now, while maintaining that state of calmness, ask your heart for guidance, solutions, or maybe a deeper understanding regarding a life issue that you might be experiencing. So in that inner stillness, just ask your heart for guidance, solutions, or deeper understanding about an issue you're experiencing. And then let's just imagine stillness, that inner stillness, as a peaceful place in which you're sitting. If thoughts do come up, don't push against them. Just casually refocus on breathing love and peace into the stillness. And that's going to help our higher choices become more obvious as you increase your capacity to listen in the stillness of your own heart's intuitive guidance. So just listen for the heart's intuitive guidance in that stillness. And a helpful hint here when you're really listening for your heart's intuition, don't expect a Siri or Alexa type of attendant on the other end, right, to come up with a download, especially if it's a complex issue. These intuitive answers may come later through something someone says or an inner signal you get. Might be something you read that you're guided to. Could be while you're in the shower, or driving. So just to review, you start with heart focused breathing, keeping your energy focused in the heart, breathing that feeling of inner stillness. And the second step, you want to softly radiate love and peace to all your cells, to your inner environment. And while you're in maintaining that deeper state of calmness and inner stillness, ask your heart for guidance. And just imagine that stillness as your peaceful place that you can go to anytime. And remember not to push against thoughts. Just casually refocus on breathing love and peace into the stillness. And as I said, Stephen, that's something that you can do anytime, anywhere. It just takes a little practice.
Yeah, wonderfully soothing. And yeah, just kind of realigns the whole system. And how often do you recommend doing that in the course of a day?
Well, that can really depend. If you've got a lot of stress in your life, I'd recommend doing it whenever those stressful feelings come up. And even if you just do the first step, just
Hmm.
heart focused breathing and just breathe a feeling of inner calm or inner stillness. Even just that step can be hugely beneficial for people.
Hmm.
But especially if it's around an issue or something that you're struggling with, and going on to those next steps where you stay with really calming your mental emotional energy, then asking your intuitive heart's guidance
Hmm.
can be really helpful.
Hmm. Is it helpful to once you've achieved that coherence to surface into your mind particular situations that tend to be triggers or stresses, and then
Well,
just kind of work those out, or you just let those be?
you could do, well, either way. I mean, you have a particular challenge that you're just perplexed by, you can certainly have that in mind as you do this exercise. Like you
Hmm.
can ask for your intuitive guidance around a specific issue or challenge. Or oftentimes I'll just ask myself, what do I need to hear most in this moment?
Hmm. Keep it open-ended like that and let your heart know where the heart radar know where to go. Beautiful. Well, I know that you've actually done research on this heart-centered intuition being more accurate. Maybe share a little bit about how it's actually you get better information from your heart than if you're focusing elsewhere for your intuition.
Yeah, that's, sure. So one of my favorite topics, actually. One of the things that over the years, and we continue to hear this, probably the most common thing people say when they start practicing the coherent skills, if they stayed with them for a while, at least a few weeks, is they start coming back and saying, God, my intuitions, this is not subtle. It's noticeably different. And then the second thing usually that a lot of people say is, and synchronicities have become a way of life. There's just a different flow now,
Hmm.
just a more easeful flow. So that motivated us to figure out how to do some very rigorous lab-based research studies on uh, what I call non-local intuition, because there's really three types of intuition. And we will go into those three types in the 7-week course as well. But what we, to make a very long story short, these are very rigorous studies where we're measuring the electrocardiogram, brain waves, skin conductance, these types of things. And we developed several protocols over the years to study this. But the first ones are probably the simplest to understand, where the person would be sitting at a computer, all wired up, and then an image would appear on the screen that would either be a really negative image, like a snake striking the screen, or a bad guy with a knife, or these kind of things, kind of images that have been well researched to evoke certain types of emotions and different intensities of emotions. Then on the other end of the spectrum, we had images of flower pots and nature scenes, very positive, uplifting images. And to make a long story short, what those studies found, and this has been repeated many times now, is that the heart was the first organ or system in the body to get the intuitive information
Hmm.
for anything else. The heart then sent a measurably, and that's an important part of the statement, you can measure the different neural signal being sent to the brain, all before you saw the future picture,
That's amazing.
right? So, um,
So the heart is in some ways like feeding the future back to us in a way, and
yeah.
that's really
Well,
fascinating.
the way I think of this is that we have two hearts. You have the physical heart, and of course, it has its own intrinsic cardiac nervous system or heart, brain, and all the physical things that are truly amazing once you look a little bit deeper. Then we also have what we here at HeartMath we call the energetic heart. It's also been called the spiritual heart for a very long time. But I'm just suggesting here that the energetic heart is real. It's not a metaphor. It's a very complex system in its own structure. It's kind of the conductor of the energetic system, and it serves as the bridge to your own larger self. It's what we call it here, or you can call it your higher self. Some people would say that, you're listening to your soul or your spirit, the wisdom of your own soul or spirit. We just call it your larger self. And when I say that, I mean this literally, but it's part of our own undivided wholeness. Stephen, I think it's becoming very clear in the sciences now that any living system is a multidimensional being or system. So what we're really talking about here is that bridge to the higher dimensional aspects of ourself, of our own wholeness, in a way, is a good way to say it. And unfortunately, most of humanity is living from the mind. You remember when I was talking about the emotional system, in the three parts?
Hmm.
Well, the emotional system is basically neutral. So it can be set into activity and action either through the mind or from the heart. And when I say heart, I mean the heart as the bridge to our higher dimensional self, our larger self. So the source of stress, which is increasing dramatically in every survey done across the planet right now, that's because the emotional system is being pretty much only activated and driven by the mind without that intuitive guidance of the heart. And this is really the biggest source of stress there is
Mm.
for people out there.
One of the things that's really become clear with the acceleration of technology, particularly AI, is the rate at which society is changing is going to be continuing to accelerate in coming years. What have you seen about people's ability to be resilient in the face of just whatever
Yeah.
changes are happening when they're more coherent?
Well, that's absolutely the key to it is coherence allows us to adapt to in a positive way to change rather than being fearful, right? And one of the things that I would say is the most beneficial from really learning and practicing coherence as we really connect with that deeper intuitive guidance system and really become familiar with that. Along with that becomes a very deep inner security, a type of security that knows that we can ultimately handle whatever life brings our way. Right? We're going to have to do it anyway, right? So this just takes a lot of the anxiety and the fear of the future out of it with that inner knowingness that whatever happens and whatever changes we do all face, and we're all facing a lot of change in today's world,
Hmm.
that we'll be able to deal with it, basically, to handle it.
Well, this has been really fascinating already, and even though it's not something we described, I want to kind of go into a little bit of some of the macro effects that you're also seeing beyond the individual health and well-being and even interpersonal, is how some of these field effects, the energetic heart can actually shift things well beyond the personal and into the collective.
Yeah, well, good question. Well, I mean, just the personal are profound. There are over 500 actually independent studies now on heart coherence practices that have been done all over the world now in about every kind of I mean, not just clinical studies, but obviously one of the best things is this is a rapid way to reduce anxiety, worry, anxiety, fear, these types of emotions. So the mental health is huge, but there's also a lot of physical health studies. And some really neat ones have been coming out in the last few years showing that coherence practices, literally just beating in heart coherence, is rewiring the brain. These are really well done fMRI studies at USC, a whole series of studies. But to answer your question, I was talking earlier about how we radiate a magnetic field into the environment. So a lot of our work has been on social coherence, meaning that, by coherence, I mean how well are our systems getting along and working together harmoniously. So we've been doing a fair amount of work now in group settings. In other words, how do we get a group, whether that's a family, a leadership team, work team, whatever, to work together more harmoniously, right? So that's one of the huge benefits is people learn to get along better.
Hmm.
And that's directly related to in a group or a team context of getting more done, right? But in a more fun, harmonious way. But then to take it to the next step, which I think what you're really asking me about, we also have a project we started in, I think, 2008 called the Global Coherence Initiative. Because once we started seeing the results of these studies in the local, say the local environment, right, like within groups and teams and the energetic communication between people, then the next question became, well, what is that also affecting the more of the global field? So that's what the Global Coherence Initiative is all about. And we have a number of tools in our toolbox to really do this. I call it energetic interconnectivity research. In other words, how are we connected, interconnected with others at a more non-local level and with the Earth itself? So there's the first research tool was what we call the Global Coherence Monitoring System, Stephen. And this is a global network of ultra-sensitive magnetometers placed around the Earth in very strategic locations that measure the resonant frequencies in the Earth's magnetic fields. Now, that's important. And we had to do this ourselves. I wish we didn't, because it's been a very expensive and time-intensive project to get these sites around the world. Let me just give one tidbit of why this is important. So we know we live in the Earth's geomagnetic field, right? We learned that back in probably grade school. The North Pole, South Pole, the magnetic field that our compasses tune into. And thank God we have a magnetic field because it's what protects Earth from the solar wind. And without a magnetic field, Earth would turn into Mars very quickly. Like, but here's the thing: these big field lines, magnetic field lines, that are going around from North to South Pole, you can think of those like guitar strings,
Hmm.
and you can pluck them and they vibrate. Now, Earth is turning, of course, and you have the solar wind rushing by, plucking the strings, so they're vibrating. And when we measure the frequency of these, and the technical term for this is field line resonances, kind of a neat term, uh, is zero frequency. In frequency language, it's zero point 0.1 hertz. That means it's one cycle or one vibration every 10 seconds. Here's the crazy thing, or the wild thing. It's exactly the same frequency as the human heart rhythm when we're in a coherent state. In other words, as humans, we also have a resonant frequency, right? Which is what we call the heart coherence frequency. It's just zero point 0.1 hertz. So in other words, and we've published a lot of studies on this in recent years showing that we often synchronize the heart rhythms synchronized to the Earth's rhythms. And there's a lot of benefits to that. We won't go into that now. And when we're stressed, it gets us out of sync with the natural rhythms we all live in. And that's not good, right?
Yeah.
And we naturally get out of sync with the Earth's rhythms, kind of humanity does, when there's a solar storm, and it hits the Earth's magnetic field and it becomes very disturbed. We don't like that. It doesn't feel good to us. That's when we have sleep problems, get angrier quicker, get triggered easier, these kind of things. Um, so anyway, that's one system. And we also have a global tree monitoring system where we're measuring the electrical activity of trees all around the world because we're suggesting that all living systems are connected by these fields that I'm talking about. In fact, we just completed a couple of really awesome studies on where we're sending love to trees as a community, as a collective, and some awesome results. In fact, I'll be able to. I just saw the last round earlier today, so we'll show those in the course as well. I'll add those
Wow.
in. Neat stuff, really neat
I
stuff.
I love that you guys that sounds fascinating. I love that you just keep going further with this
Yeah,
work and really showing how heart coherence is really at the heart of how we harmonize the whole planet. It's really
yeah. Well, and then we also are the new home for the. I know you're aware of the Global Consciousness Project,
Mhm.
but there's a new version that we're the new home for that. It's called GCP 2.0 or Global Consciousness Project 2.0, which is a completely new re-envisioned version of that project, and a lot of neat stuff coming out of that as well. I'll just give one tidbit here, which I find really helpful. I think a lot of people love this data. And just to give this context here, Dr. Nelson, Roger Nelson, who started the original project in 30 years ago, was able to show over the years that events that evoke a lot of humans to synchronize their emotions at the same time, good or bad, causes this global network of random number generators to synchronize. Somehow they become interconnected. And he was able to show that the number of people involved that get in the event is related to the effect size on this cohering or creating this effect in the global network. Well, in GCP2, we designed it to ask new questions. And one of those new questions is, can a small group who's coherent with a shared intention have as large and maybe even larger effects than the masses. And it's looking really good. So we've got brand new data. In fact, we're just getting ready to submit a paper on this that shows that pretty small, relatively small groups who are in a coherent state with a shared focus and intention can actually pulse the entire global consciousness field in a measurable way.
Wow.
And this is really hopeful because a lot
That's
of people ask,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like the old Margaret Mead quote around a small group of people. Never doubt that a small group of people can
yeah,
change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. It's a
yeah,
amazing scientific validation of that on an
exactly,
energetic
exactly,
level.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, Roland, this is great. It's always fascinating to talk to you because there's new layers that emerge and new science and so much cool stuff, and it's so practical too. So let's talk about your upcoming course more explicitly, since it's a really powerful way to get the leading edge of the science and the practice and apply it in your own life. So we're very blessed that Roland has agreed to teach a brand new course. It's called Heart Brain Healing. Embody love with heart coherence as a vibrational gateway to reducing stress and anxiety. You can find it at heartcoherencecourse.com. Coherence is ERE, heartcoherencecourse.com. It's a 7 week program. There's no prerequisites for this. It's just if you're intuitively drawn and you recognize the power and the promise of what Roland is sharing. So Roland, I'd love for you to share in your own words about some of your intentions for what people will come away from the course with, and then we'll go through the modules.
I'll be happy to. Thank you, Stephen. Well, this in this year's course, I really wanted to focus on helping people really understand the emotional system and very practical techniques they can use to reduce stress. And by stress, if you don't like the word stress, anxiety, worry, thought loops, fear of the future, these things, type of feelings that, because it's so many of us are feeling that these days. And our research is, I call it applied research. All the research we do has a reason, and that's to find ways to help people navigate these changing times with more grace, more ease, to be able to flow through the changes and challenges of life. So that's really what this course is ultimately about. Now, I am going to talk about science, but the science, we really do our best to talk about it in a way that's kind of people friendly, right? You don't have to be a scientist
Mhm.
to really distill what's in it for me. Why is this important for me? That kind of science to really help people understand how we're wired, how we work, and why these techniques are so effective. So we're going to start in the first module and the first week. And let's see, that's titled From Stress to Inner Peace is the first module. And that's really, we'll really be talking there about really helping to understand your emotional system and your vibrational health. And so that'll be the focus in that one. And then we're going to move in the second module, which is a really important one, to the power of emotional awareness. And when I say emotional awareness and self-awareness, that's something that no matter where you are at, there's always a deeper level. Because ultimately we want to get to the self-awareness of really being aware of our energetic system and being able to detect these thoughts, emotions, and triggers in the energetic level. Because it's a lot easier to turn them around there. And we'll be getting some very specific techniques on how to actually do that in real time. Third module, we're going to go a little bit more into the science of heart brain, getting the heart and brain in sync, and how we can harness coherence to sharpen your thinking and your experience more well-being and really to go a little bit deeper in dissolving stress. Module 4, we delved a little bit into this today. It's called practical intuition, a very specific technique. It's called freeze frame, how you can access your own heart's inner guidance, your intuitive awareness. But we'll also talk about the three types of intuition in that module as well. And then module 5, also a really important one. And that one's titled Rewiring Your Emotional Baseline. Now, here we're going to delve into really understanding how the brain actually works in terms of recognizing patterns and how the brain compares them to existing internal memories. And we call those internal baselines. And this understanding this is the key to transformation. I mean, that's what we're really after here in this whole program, Stephen, is to really help people shift that inner baseline. Because once we do that, the techniques that we'll be teaching, they then become automatic. You don't have to work at it so hard and even think about it. And this is when the work becomes truly transformational in people's lives, where they become more automatically connected with their own intuitive guidance system. And the stressful feelings, the feelings of anxiety or overwhelm or fear, they start to feel uncomfortable because they're not matching our internal baseline. So we'll delve into the science of that and some very practical techniques of how to shift our internal baseline in that module. Module 6, that's titled Clearing the Path. So here we're going to go much deeper into dissolving the old patterns that don't serve us well, right? Not only recognizing them, but a very practical and powerful technique that can really help take us deeper into right down to the cellular level of clearing some of the old patterns and stuck places that we might not even be aware of. And then in the last module, module 7, that's exploring the global energetic connections. That's where we're going to go a lot deeper into some of what you were asking me about today, about the global energetic interconnectivity research. And I'm thrilled to say that we'll be able to, even if you've taken this course before, we're going to have some new stuff to talk about in that module. Really all of these, but especially that module.
Well, it's really exciting, and I know there's always new science emerging from you all. There's new practices. And it just keeps deepening this work. And we already know that it's impacted millions of lives, and that there's so many profoundly grateful students that have taken your programs before. So it's great to have this next level synthesis. So again, the whole program is laid out a little more detailed than Roland just covered at heartcoherencecourse.com, heartcoherencecourse.com. You've just heard about the 7 90-minute live sessions, and you will have a chance to ask your questions live, which is super valuable to really ask Roland directly to both the science and the practice behind this work. And you'll get recordings of every session, both video and audio. You'll have word for word transcripts to work with, study, and highlight. There's weekly practices you can do at home. There's also a community group to support you and deepen your experience. And on the page, you'll also see a number of extra bonuses that Roland and HeartMath have been very generous in offering as part of this program, each of which enhances your journey. There's 2 PDF ebooks that are from HeartMath called The Appreciative Heart and The Energetic Heart. Roland, you want to share a little bit about those 2 ebooks and why they're valuable?
They're will really help deepen what we talk about in the course. The Energetic Heart, one of my favorite ebooks actually, really goes deeper into what we were talking about earlier about that energetic communication between people. There's a lot of graphs and charts in there that actually show the measurement of that and a deeper discussion of why it's important, but how we can use that information in our personal lives.
Those are great bonuses, and there's actually 2 more PDF ebooks that from HeartMath. One is called 12 HeartMath Tools for Reducing Stress and Staying Balanced, and the other is 10 HeartMath Practices for Reducing Stress and Pressure Decisions, Choices, and Interactions.
One of my favorite guidebooks, actually. These are so valuable. Um, I mean, if you just got those, it could be life transformation. Those last 2 you talked about.
Mm. And then, as if that's not enough, I can't believe how much you've added in from HeartMath for this program. There's a 118-page PDF ebook called The Science of the Heart, Volume 2.
Oh,
And that's a
wow. I didn't know
special
we were
bonus.
doing that. Yeah.
That's a special bonus that for folks who sign up right away by midnight tonight Pacific time. This gives more encouragement for you to really make the decision now. Tune in with your own heart, and if you're getting the impulse and intuition, this is important to move forward, then you're going to get a special 118-page ebook as well. So you want to share more about the Science of the Heart, Volume 2?
Yeah, that's a 10 chapter, I think 10 chapter book. And it's really for those science nerds that really want the science. But it's written about the level of a Scientific American article. And that there's chapters that really go into a lot of the different things that we haven't talked about today. Certainly a chapter on heart-brain coherence and heart rate variability, chapter on intuition. There's also a chapter on how this work affects organizations and education, schools and classrooms and so on. So it's a great, great overview of the science of the heart, really, is I guess as the title says. So it's been a very popular book. For us. I mean, I'm surprised to see the number of people who've read that book over the last few years.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you all have been so generative and so creative and so willing to just keep exploring the frontiers of the science. It's really exciting to get the distillation of all of it for our benefit. So again, the whole program is laid out in more detail at heartcoherencecourse.com. And the few other things, we've kept the investment very accessible, considering the long-term benefit of this work. And it's three payments of $128, or you can save 10% if you pay in full upfront with one payment of $349. The course is going to start October 27th and run Mondays at 9 a.m. Pacific or noon Eastern. And even if you can't make those live times, though, you can still get the full value with the recordings and the transcripts in the community as well. There's some beautiful testimonials from previous courses. Extremely grateful for Dr. McCraty's lifelong dedication to researching the power of our hearts. He's so humble, kind, and brilliant. Come away refreshed and revitalized. A lot of great testimonials. We have many happy students of this work and practitioners. So you are in really good hands, and you're going to get the latest science. There's nowhere in the world that's done more leading edge science in this domain, and you are, I think, going to have a really beautiful journey if you choose to move forward. So again, it's all at heartcoherencecourse.com, heartcoherencecourse.com, and you'll get that special 118-page ebook when you sign up today, The Science of the Heart, Volume 2. So, Roland, another fascinating hour with you. Just love what you're up to. Thank you. Anything that's still on your heart you want to share with folks who are thinking about joining you?
Well, thank you. And I so appreciate you, Stephen, and the Shift Network for continuing to bring these courses to a new audience. I really do. And, I guess what I would sincerely just like to invite anybody listening to this to attend the course. I think you'll get a lot out of it. And it's a time for me to really connect with you all. And one of the things I enjoy most about the way the courses are structured is that last part where we open it up for Q&A and discussion, where we really get to connect, one-on-one with everyone or those that want to have questions or make comments. It helps me get to know you and the questions you have. That always helps me with future courses as well to really know what's on your mind.
Yeah.
I like that part a lot about the
Yeah.
courses. So,
That's part of why we find that the live interactive courses are so valuable. You stay more engaged, you
yeah,
get a chance to ask questions, you've got a community around this work, and it really helps to engage the practices and
yeah,
stay and really do the work because that's where the benefit comes.
right.
So thank you, Roland. Thank you all for joining. It's been a fascinating hour. Look forward to seeing many of you in the upcoming course. And again, all the details are at heartcoherencecourse.com, heartcoherencecourse.com, and you'll get that special ebook of Science of the Heart Volume 2 when you sign up by midnight tonight. So thank you so much.
Great. Take care, everyone. Hope to see you there.